Have you ever heard the spine-chilling tales of places like the Bermuda Triangle or the terrifying legends of the Catacombs of Paris? What if I told you that the curses are just myths and the truth is far more fascinating? Join us as we journey to supposedly haunted grounds and cursed ruins, not to be scared, but to finally reveal the groundbreaking facts that prove these myths are nothing but fiction. Welcome to Fact Finders Collective. Today, we're exploring 10 cursed places that aren't actually cursed. Because behind every chilling legend or don't go there tale lies a real explanation. From psychology and geology to archaeology and history. You'll see how myths are born, why people cling to them, and why the truth is often way more fascinating than the legend. The Bermuda Triangle, also known as the Devil's Triangle, is probably the most famous cursed location on Earth. According to the legend, this stretch of ocean between Florida, Bermuda, and Puerto Rico swallows ships and planes without a trace. Ghost stories, magnetic anomalies, even whispers of aliens have been tied to its name. Sounds terrifying, right? But the truth is, the Bermuda Triangle isn't even officially recognized as a danger zone. In fact, the U.S. Board on Geographic Names doesn't acknowledge it at all. The so-called mystery largely exploded after a 1964 magazine article sensationalized a few accidents. But statistically, ships and planes disappear here at about the same rate as anywhere else in the ocean. It's one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. More traffic means more accidents. The reality is less supernatural, but still fascinating. The triangle has unpredictable weather, powerful Gulf Stream currents, and tricky navigational challenges that can easily overwhelm unprepared crews. That's not a curse, it's just nature being nature. In the frozen expanse of Antarctica, a waterfall flows not with clear, icy water, but with deep, blood-red liquid. Early explorers were baffled. Some whispered of curses or supernatural forces trapped beneath the ice, while sensational stories painted it as a sign of the continent's dark secrets. The truth, however, is far more scientific and equally fascinating. Bloodfalls gets its color from iron-rich saltwater trapped under the glacier. When the iron oxidizes after contact with the air, it turns a vivid red, much like rust forming on metal. Even more incredible, this underground brine is cut off from light and oxygen, yet still supports unique microbial life that survives in conditions once thought impossible. It's not a curse, it's a hidden ecosystem thriving in one of the coldest, harshest places on Earth. Bloodfalls may not be haunted or cursed, but it is a window into that extraordinary subglacial world, a reminder that even the most remote corners of our planet can harbor chemistry and life beyond our expectations. Across the arid grasslands of Namibia, and more recently discovered in Australia, lie strange, barren rings scattered in almost perfect patterns. Local legends say these are the footprints of gods or the work of dragons breathing fire beneath the earth. Others whisper about alien landings or ancient curses. To stand among them feels like stepping into another world. But science offers a very different explanation. And honestly, it's just as mind-blowing. Researchers have shown that these circles are the result of ecological self-organization. In simple terms, plants in harsh deserts compete for water, and over time, they naturally space themselves out in patterns that look, well, almost designed. The result is these eerie, barren rings framed by taller grass around the edges. It's survival written into geometry. Fairy circles are a wonder of nature. Proof that even the harshest landscapes can create beauty through balance, competition, and survival. So, why do we invent curses and legends in the first place? It often starts with the way our brains are wired. Psychologists call them cognitive biases, mental shortcuts that help us make sense of the world, but sometimes lead us astray. In the Bermuda Triangle, we see confirmation bias. We focus on the disappearances while ignoring the thousands of uneventful journeys. At blood falls, its proportionality bias, blood red water looks terrifying, so our minds assume the cause must be terrifying too. And in the Namibian desert, agenticity bias takes over. Neat circles in the sand feel designed, so we credit gods, dragons, or aliens. These mental shortcuts once helped our ancestors survive, but they also made us vulnerable to inventing stories where none exist. And once a story sounds good enough, it sticks, no matter how simple the real explanation might be. And now, let's get back to our list. Because there are plenty more so-called cursed places to explore, and even more fascinating truths hiding behind them. Imagine walking along a lake where the water looks like blood and the shoreline is littered with perfectly preserved animals turned into statues. That's Lake Natron in northern Tanzania, a place so unsettling that locals once whispered it was cursed, a gateway where spirits turned intruders into stone. But while the lake does preserve animals, it's not a punishment from the gods, it's chemistry. Lake Natron's waters are highly alkaline, filled with sodium carbonate and minerals that can calcify anything unlucky enough to fall in. To the human eye, it looks like petrification, but in reality, it's natural preservation, like a desert mummy created by salt instead of sand. Here's the irony. This so-called cursed lake is also a cradle of life. Millions of flamingos use it as a safe breeding ground. Predators avoid the caustic waters, making it the perfect nursery. What looked like death and doom is actually one of Africa's most vital sanctuaries. Lake Natron may not turn trespassers to stone with a curse, but it proves how powerful landscapes can inspire myths, and how the truth, once uncovered, can be even more extraordinary than the legend. Deep in the Peruvian Amazon lies a river that seems impossible. Its waters bubble and steam as if heated by a curse. Local legends tell of spirits punishing those who trespass, or of a sacred river that can kill anyone foolish enough to fall in. To explorers, it seemed like a place where the earth itself was angry. This is the Shanai Tempishka, often called the Boiling River. Unlike most boiling rivers, which are heated by nearby volcanoes, this one flows hundreds of kilometers away from any volcanic activity. So what causes it to boil? Deep geothermal vents beneath the Earth's crust heat groundwater, which then feeds directly into the river. It's a natural pressure cooker hidden under the jungle. And just like with other cursed places, the legend became useful. For locals, it reinforced respect for a dangerous site. For outsiders, it added mystery that drew explorers and researchers. The boiling river isn't supernatural, but it is a rare and extraordinary window into the raw power of our planet. At the base of Japan's Mount Fuji lies Aokigahara, a sprawling forest so thick it's called the Sea of Trees, but around the world, it's more often known by a darker name, the Suicide Forest. Myths describe it as cursed, haunted by restless spirits, or imbued with strange magnetic forces that make compasses spin and travelers lose their way. But here's the truth. Aokigahara isn't cursed. It's a quiet, beautiful forest growing on hardened lava flows from Mount Fuji's past eruptions. The thick volcanic rock does sometimes make GPS and cell signals patchy, but compasses still work just fine. The real danger here isn't ghosts or curses, but simply how easy it is to get disoriented in such dense, uniform woodland. So where do the myths come from? In part, from centuries-old Japanese folklore, stories of yurei, spirits bound by tragedy, warned people away from dangerous terrain. The haunted reputation wasn't just fear for fear's sake. It was a way to protect the vulnerable, reminding travelers, children, and villagers, enter with caution or risk never returning. And in modern times, Aokigahara became linked with suicide in literature and film, cementing its eerie reputation worldwide. Tragedy created stories, and stories fueled more tragedy in a cycle that is cultural, not supernatural. Today, Japanese authorities work to change the forest's reputation, emphasizing its natural beauty instead of its myths. Because in reality, Aokigahara is not a cursed place. It's a vibrant, living forest at the foot of one of the world's most iconic mountains. The legend may be haunting, but the truth is far more human and far more hopeful. Before science, stories were our only survival manual. If a river could boil animals alive, the safest explanation was that it was cursed, so people would stay away. If animals turned to stone on the edge of a red lake, spirits must be punishing trespassers, so you'd keep your distance. And if a forest seemed to swallow travelers whole, then clearly it was haunted, so children knew not to wander off alone. These legends weren't just entertainment. They were warnings disguised as myths. Fear was a tool. Better to believe in angry spirits than to risk a child boiling alive, getting lost forever, or drinking toxic water. And once those stories worked, they spread. A haunting tale is easy to remember, powerful to repeat, and impossible to shake. This is social contagion in action. Folklore evolving into legend, legends embedding into culture, and myths becoming survival lessons etched into memory. And with that, let's keep going. Because the world's supply of so-called cursed places is far from over, and the next ones show just how powerful stories can be. In the deserts of northern Mexico lies a place with a name fit for a horror story, La Zona del Silencio, the Zone of Silence. According to legend, radios mysteriously cut out, compasses spin in circles, and UFOs stalk the skies. It's been called Mexico's own Bermuda Triangle, a cursed wasteland where technology fails and strange forces linger. The truth, much less supernatural. The desert is rich in magnetic iron deposits that can mess a little with compasses, and its remoteness makes radio signals weak at best. That's silence explained. Geology plus geography. But then came an event that truly sealed the myth. In July 1970, the U.S. Athena test rocket launched from Utah went wildly off course and crashed here in the Mapimi Desert. To make matters worse, it carried small containers of radioactive cobalt-57. The U.S. Air Force rushed in, removed hundreds of tons of soil, and set up a guarded cleanup operation. Locals watched soldiers swarm the desert with strange machines, and one guard even began spreading rumors of magnetic anomalies, mutant wildlife, and extraterrestrial visitors. And that's how myths snowball. When something bizarre happens, like a missile crashing in the desert, aliens and curses feel more satisfying than oops, navigation error. Add in locals eager to attract curious tourists, and the Zone of Silence became a legend that feeds itself. In reality, it's not cursed at all. Just geology, geography, and one very unlucky missile test. In the Judge C.R. Magny State Park in northern Minnesota lies a waterfall with a mystery that puzzled locals and scientists alike for decades. At Devil's Kettle, the Brule River splits in two. One half flows downstream like normal, while the other disappears into a giant hole in the rock and seemingly vanishes forever. For years, legends claimed the water slipped into another dimension, or even traveled all the way to the center of the Earth. Sadly, or luckily, no interdimensional portal here. Scientists eventually solved the mystery using dye tests and flow measurements. The vanishing water doesn't leave our world at all. It rejoins the river downstream through underground cracks and fissures in the rock. A natural plumbing system, not a gateway to hell. So why the legend? Because humans hate loose ends. For decades, every attempt to drop ping pong balls, dye, or even GPS trackers into the hole seemed to fail. Nothing popped up downstream. That lack of evidence was a perfect breeding ground for speculation. If you can't see where it goes, maybe it really does vanish into the unknown. Over time, that sense of wonder and the eerie name Devil's Kettle gave the legend a life of its own. Tourists came for the mystery, not the answer. But the truth is just as fascinating. Even without portals or curses, nature found a way to hide its handiwork in plain sight. In the heart of Transylvania, Not far from Dracula's castle lies Hoia, a forest with a reputation that chills even the bravest. Locals whisper of ghosts, cursed clearings where nothing grows, and even UFOs spotted hovering above the treetops. Some visitors report strange lights, unexplained burns on their skin, or the feeling of being watched. But let's step out of the shadows. Scientifically, Hoia is an ordinary forest, though with a few quirks. The oddly shaped trees, often bent and twisted, are the result of natural, irregular growth patterns. The infamous dead zone clearing, where no vegetation grows. Soil studies show slight differences in composition, but nothing supernatural. And those supposed UFO photos? Most likely light leaks and camera defects from the 1960s. The legend stuck, partially, thanks to psychology. When people enter a place expecting to feel fear, their minds are primed for it. Every creak of a branch becomes a ghost. Every patch of fog becomes something sinister. And part of it is storytelling. In a region already famous for Dracula and vampire myths, a haunted forest was a natural addition. Add in UFO hysteria in the 20th century, and suddenly Hoia became a magnet for mystery. And, of course, there's the practical side. Legends sell. Today, paranormal tours, documentaries, and tourism campaigns keep the story alive. Not because the forest is cursed, but because mystery makes for great business. Beneath the romantic streets of Paris lies something far darker. Miles of tunnels, stacked floor to ceiling with human bones. The Paris Catacombs, sometimes called the Empire of the Dead, have inspired chilling legends for centuries. Visitors whisper of ghosts, cursed passageways that swallow explorers whole, and labyrinths so confusing you'll never escape. The real story begins in the 18th century when Paris's overflowing cemeteries created a public health crisis. The solution? Move the remains of millions underground into old limestone quarries. Over time, workers carefully arranged the bones into eerie patterns, creating the macabre galleries we see today. The catacombs aren't cursed. They're an ingenious, if unsettling, solution to a very real urban problem. And then, the atmosphere did the rest. Miles of dim tunnels, walls made of skulls, and the echo of footsteps in the dark. It's no wonder the catacombs inspired ghost stories and urban legends. Over time, they stopped being just a burial site and became a reflection of our own fascination with death. Today, millions visit each year, not because they fear the catacombs, but because they're drawn to them. To the mystery, the history, and the quiet reminder that beneath every great city lies the story of those who came before. Not every legend survives by chance. Some are deliberately nurtured because mystery has value. A good story can attract attention, draw visitors, and even become an industry. Take the Zone of Silence. A US rocket crash in the 1970s was strange enough, but once rumors of aliens and magnetic anomalies spread, locals realized the tale itself could bring in curious travelers. The same with Devil's Kettle. A hole swallowing a river is a neat geological trick. But call it the Devil's Kettle, and suddenly the park has a brand new attraction. Hoia Forest might just be an ordinary patch of woodland, but the Bermuda Triangle of Romania sells far better. And the Paris Catacombs, millions now pay to walk among bones, not just because of history, but because of the thrill of walking through the Empire of the Dead. Fear, mystery, and the promise of the forbidden make the catacombs as marketable as the Eiffel Tower. This is the power of narrative. A mystery isn't only a story, it's a product. Legends survive not just because people believe them, but because people want them. They make the ordinary extraordinary, and they turn fear itself into a commodity. Our fascination with fear makes us willing customers for the myths we helped create. We've seen how myths can be born from our own cognitive biases, spread like wildfire through social contagion, and sometimes be sustained because mystery itself is profitable. But the truth is, no story ever fits neatly in just one box. Legends live because they are complex, part psychology, part culture, part commerce. The Bermuda Triangle is as much about pop culture as it is about confirmation bias. Aokigahara's myths are rooted in folklore, but reinforced by modern media. The Paris Catacombs are history, culture, and commerce intertwined. Each story we explored survives because multiple forces overlap: fear, belief, and the human love of storytelling. And when we pull back the curtain, we see something even more fascinating. The real explanations: chemistry in a crimson lake, ecology shaping deserts into patterns, geology plumbing rivers underground, history solving urban crises. The myths may not be true, but reality is every bit as extraordinary. So next time you hear about a cursed forest, a haunted desert, or a deadly triangle in the sea, pause and look deeper. The legend might be fiction, but the truth is often even better. If you enjoyed uncovering the truth behind these so-called cursed places, we've got plenty more interesting stories. Check out our other videos for hidden histories, strange science, and stories where the facts are far more fascinating than the fiction. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us on the next journey beyond the veil.